Welcome to the Reset Mantra. I'm your host, Sabina Maharjan. This podcast aims to support your journey in resetting your mind, body, and soul by sharing insightful stories and conversations with experts and guests from diverse backgrounds. We have a trailblazer in our show today. She is the visionary founder of the Great Nepali Diaspora, a nonprofit community of exceptional global Nepali talent that aims to nurture connection, collaboration, and camaraderie. She is also building a venture capital fund, Momo VC, to support underrepresented founders. She holds a Master of Advanced Management from the Yale School of Management. With over 17 years of diverse experience in tech startups, banking, and nonprofits, she is passionate about creating and supporting community-driven ventures that have a positive social and economic impact. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Preeti Adhikari. Preeti, a very warm welcome to our show, and it's an honor to have you here.
Thank you, Sabina. Super excited.
Yes, the pleasure's all mine. So I was talking to you about this a little bit off camera, but I really wanted to start. So you seem to radiate positivity everywhere you go. I know you are constantly on the go and, meeting people. So I want to know, what's your secret behind that, joy,
Behind that
like
energy,
behind that energy?
it's become almost like a running joke because people say I'm like an energizer bunny, that I'm, traveling obviously all the time and everything. One difference is, and I do want to point out that a lot of people are also hustling the way I am. It's just not on social media, right? So it sort of also points to what social media is, right? It sort of almost exaggerates a lot of things as well, right? I do a lot of things, but still I think it shouldn't make others feel FOMO, right? Because I think people are hustling in different ways. But to get back to that energy, I think, I love people. I love interacting with people. So my social battery actually increases when I meet people, right? In my personal life, or growing up, I've been I'm an introvert. I'm not that social. But then when I can activate it, and I can just uh, when I meet people, it energizes me. So the energy you see on LinkedIn or wherever, or when people meet me, is that energy that I see from people, the positive vibes that I get from people. And it's sort of this, this wonderful cycle of good energy, I think.
That's amazing. And I really love how you touched on the positive side of this being in social media and the notion of hustle culture. And I love how you break that stereotype, like the hustle culture doesn't have to be something which we take up on as a huge, big deal and put ourselves through pressure and,
Right.
all this anxiety and stress. It can be a joyful thing if
Of
you
course.
manage and have a right intention for it.
Exactly. That's so true. And I think the way you hustle, or the kind of hustle you have, is also, I think, personal. It should work for you more than for others, right? So if it works for you, it's amazing, it's enjoyable. If it doesn't, it's just overwhelming.
Mm, love it. Yeah. And I also wanted to ask you, so I recently spotted a LinkedIn post where I know you're very active in LinkedIn, and I love to walk through your post. It's inspiring. It's I think one of the most rare thing that I personally struggle to build that is connection to
Mm.
other people. I think you have that amazing thing. So I love all of your LinkedIn posts. It's very empowering. And we kind of feel connected to what you're saying. And one of those posts that I saw recently, I think maybe yesterday, was that you mentioned dreaming of becoming a doctor as a little girl. Now, you're an expert today in the world of tech startups and community building, which is quite a different path.
Of course.
What sparked this change in direction, and how did you find your way to where you are today?
I mean, it's a long story, but I mean, just Manse, it basically, always wanted to be a doctor growing up. but when I started taking high school, like in high school, when I started taking biology and all of those classes, I don't think I enjoyed it that much. I think it was more the title, or the I think the dream of becoming this professional, like this medical professional that saves lives and all of that. I think it is still so respected and so incredible, right, in terms of what doctors do and all of that. I don't think I enjoyed the process of becoming one. So very disillusioned at that point. And then since then, it's been about finding my way around things and figuring out a lot of life, right? When I look back, or when people actually look at my career, it seems very non-linear. I've gone from, been a part of a lot of different industries, done a lot of different things. So again, an advice to everybody that is listening is, not everybody needs to have a straight line path, right? And it's great if as a child, as a 5-year-old or 10-year-old, if you already know what you want to be and you go on that path, right? It's incredible. I love that. But for a lot of people, it's also a lot of exploring and figuring out and making mistakes and all of that, right? So for me, I think it has been a combination of all of that, right? Trying something because I'm interested in that topic, like for example, just artificial intelligence and so on. Being non-technical, I don't code or anything like that, but being interested in that space and working there, especially as the VP of marketing for an AI startup, and loving that. But then taking that to a new sort of phase with what I'm doing now with the Great Nepali Diaspora and everything, has been a lot of experimentation, a lot of exploring, and I think also giving myself that permission to try new things, I think.
I think all of those makes so much sense. Especially when you mention living in alignment. A lot of time, as women especially, or um, we're expected to figure out life by certain age and be accomplished, and there's so much societal expectations, right? And I think when you said, okay, to figure out what we want to do in life, we have to explore, experiment, and there's ups and downs and failures. I think that was so powerful. And this brings me to my next question of, you built this community, Nepali diaspora, and which has brought together so many professionals, talents, and even, non-professionals, just as a group where we can feel connected, where we have a sense of belongingness, right? Where we can ask questions, share our knowledge, and sort of bridging that gap between who to ask question, how to ask question, and who's going to help us, right? I think there's a lot of unknown, especially as Asian American immigrants living in states or around the globe. So I think that's an amazing platform. So thank you for creating that, first of all.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so now I'm aware that, there are various Nepalese nonprofit organizations and communities worldwide, each with unique mission, ranging from supporting one another to preserving our culture, heritage. And I want to know what inspired you to found the Great Nepali Diaspora, and what sort of specific vision, or, did you have any specific vision or some mission in your mind when you created it? And I know that you've traveled and lived around the world, right? From Asia Pacific to Canada and to States now. So tell me a little bit more about your inspiration or your mission about behind creating this community.
Sure. So with Nepalis, one thing is, certain, right? We are very social. So wherever we go, we sort of are in clusters. And there are a lot of Nepali organizations, like you said, that work really to bring people together, preserve our culture, all of that. And that's incredible. I love the work that everybody does. What I'm building for is actually the pain points that I experienced as a student, or as a working professionals, and especially with all my moves around the world, right? I always felt like socially we're so connected as Nepalis, right? We're so comfortable. We can connect, and we do all of that. But professionally, we're still like a few steps behind, right? Especially with strangers, with family, with friends. Of course, we're there to help. We sort of go out of our way to help, each other, right? But when the other person is a stranger but a Nepali, we don't have that connection, right? And on the professional aspect, what I've seen, through different universities, through different groups, is people, if people have a common factor, they help each other, right? And I didn't see that with Nepalis, where people wouldn't ask, how can I help you? People wouldn't ask, go out of their way to help somebody that's looking for a job, or even advice on careers and things like that, right? I mean, and if they were doing it, it wasn't visible. So I wouldn't even claim that people weren't helping on either, other people. They weren't mentoring. What has been a problem with our diaspora is a lot of activities is, not there's not no transparency, no visibility. So we weren't able to see, what are Nepalis in different industries doing, right? How are they supporting the next generation? How are they contributing to our community as or Nepal, right? There was just not a lot of information available. So for us, I think it's been an endeavor to not just bring individuals but also organizations together, right? Saying that, okay, yes, everybody's been doing a lot of work, but maybe on the professional side, this is what we could do, right? This is maybe a small sort of behavior change in terms of whether it's networking, whether it's mentorship, and so on. But it has, amazing domino effects in terms of that impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was a very, I love everything you said. And as a fellow Nepalese immigrant, I can very well resonate with everything you said, when we're even either going to school or graduating or applying for that first internship
Exactly.
or that first job, right? Someone who's similar to you and has the similar experience and similar roots and who can understand you. I think that was a very scarce resource for me,
Of course.
like a decade ago. And today, um, we have a community which is like a one click away. And I think that enablement and that access that you have,
Exactly.
aimed to provide through this platform is, I think, exactly what we all need, compared to our fellow neighbor countries like
Hmm.
India, China, Pakistan.
Exactly.
We certainly, and you can very well agree with that, we're a little bit, we're not behind, but we're getting there, right? And
Right. Right.
I don't mean to compare, but we can certainly do better, especially through your community. I came to know that there are so many talented Nepalese professionals who are starting their company and so brilliant and
Mhm.
talented. And we are so powerful when we come together, right?
Of course.
So
Of
I think
course.
that's absolutely incredible. So let me ask you this. So, you have built 50 chapters, I don't know, probably more by the time
Right.
we're talking, in different cities around the globe. And you've met thousands of Nepalese professionals. So, through your extensive experience or research with Nepalese abroad, especially, right? What are some of the common beliefs or behaviors that, in your opinion, you believe that as a Nepali we need to unlearn or overcome to reach our full potential?
Sure. Um, and I'll give you an example of before and after, starting the Great Nepali Diaspora.
Mhm.
So before I started TGND, the sort of biases or these beliefs that were holding us back were, you can't share your ideas with other Nepalis, or Nepalis don't, they just are good at just talking. There's no action, right? There's no, nothing gets done. People just talk. They're just bluff. They're just full of fluff, right? And that Nepalis are not interested to collaborate professionally with other Nepalis. With the Great Nepali Diaspora, in 1.5 years or so, we've been able to prove that that's wrong, right? Nepalis do want to network, or at least they want to. They're open to it, right? They're open to exploring what that means. With TGND, we hosted, I think, over 100 events in 1 year, right? And it's these events. It's not just hosting it, right? People have to attend it, right? So the fact that people would, come to these events in places like, not just around the US, but in places like Poland and Singapore and UK and Scotland and all kinds of places, means that there was a demand for people.
Mm.
People were looking for it, right? They didn't even understand what they were looking for, but there was a need for it, right? The fact that this was happening. So in terms of that need, or that excitement around networking and collaboration, that was there. We uncovered it, so that's super exciting. One I guess belief that I'm hoping we can take it forward in the next step is, there's two. One, we still have this scarcity mentality, I think, right?
Mm.
Where there's just room for only one, especially among women, right? I don't know if that is a social conditioning that we have, but just believing that, if you help somebody, or if you sort of share information, you sort of decrease your pie, or your sort of opportunity, or whatever, right? There's this traditional belief that your Rolodex or your contacts are supposed to be a secret, right? You're supposed to, hang on to them like this, right? And I'm so against all of that. And everything I'm building is about, okay, it actually, your Rolodex, your contacts, it actually becomes richer when you share it, right? With
Mm.
intention, not saying that, oh, here's a screenshot of my contact list and sharing it, but being very intentional about it, right? I think it adds value to everybody. So one, I'm hoping that changes is that scarcity mentality, in terms of keeping things for yourself, especially information. And two, I think, we've seen incredible mentorship happen through the platform, especially for entrepreneurship and other areas. But again, I'm hoping in 2024 we can do more of it, right? In terms of mentorship, doesn't just mean for students and working professionals, but it means so much more in terms of career growth, making the right decisions. That showcasing that roadmap for yourself and for our community and all of that. So what I'm hoping for this year is people are more, again, intentional in terms of being mentors as well as being mentees, right? In terms of taking that feedback, taking those connections, and really utilizing them to take that leap, professionally and personally.
Mm. I so agree with that. When you said about scarcity mentality, I was like nodding my head for those of you listening. Because I have felt that way. And, I was even talking to one of my friends a couple of weeks ago, where a lot of times, Nepalese, Somali, especially from small town, we have this inferior complexity. We have this scarcity mindset as to, starting from I'm not good enough, I can't do it, I can't do this. There's a lot of can'ts, or I can't do it.
Yeah.
And you said it so right. It's the conditioning that we need to break through, right? And as an adult, I think it's like a social responsibility as well, where you
Of
take
course.
yourself as a project and see what needs to be changed, unlearn, and a lot of learning. So that scarcity mentality, I think, definitely is a huge topic, probably not just Nepali, but global context. But,
Right.
I think that having the growth mindset and thinking that there is enough for all of us, and, when we come together, there's greater power, and we rise
Of
by
course.
lifting others. It's not just in theory, but it's real, right? And I think you've
Exactly. Right.
proven through your community and the people that you're bringing in, the events that you're putting together, and all of a sudden there's this empowering, incredible group of people coming together to support you. And just like you said, I
Right.
think it's probably the leadership, right, as well, where someone shows up as a leader and all of a sudden people like, okay, I know I've always wanted to. So Preeti
Right.
has provided this, and you and your team has provided this platform. So now people around the globe are coming to that event and supporting you. So I
Right.
think I'm very excited and looking forward to amazing things that you do through the community, and
Thank you.
all more Nepalese coming together
Thank you.
to support each other. Yeah. So I want to pivot to a little bit different direction for our conversation. So when you reflect on your younger self, right? I know we talked about alignment previously, but I wanted to touch on when you reflect on your younger self and looking back, how does it compare to where you are today? Did you imagine your life to be what it is today, or is it better than what you imagined? How do you see yourself from today to like when you look back to what you've done so far?
I think it's definitely better. I mean, one, I think just growing up, I was this very shy introvert nerd, and nothing wrong with that. But so it's so my family, or I, like myself, I couldn't have imagined that this is what I would do. I would deal with so many people and just be so public, right? And then that's something that again, we're my family, we're also figuring out what that means, right, as as a family, in terms of being that public and everything. But to your question, it's definitely better. I think I always wanted to do something that has social impact. But again, I think going back to biases, uh, I also thought that people that did social work looked and behaved a certain way. And I definitely didn't fit that, right? I think it's all these biases that hold us back, right? I always felt like, you had to really, and it comes to, I think, identity as well, in terms of that you needed to be certain, you needed to, I don't know, be a certain way, I think, to be a social worker, or to have the, to be, I don't want to say allowed, but to sort of do different kinds of things, right? So just as an example, uh, if you look at a lot of Nepali organizations, um, I'm not sure I would fit in all of them. I could fit in as an attendee, but I'm not sure I would fit in as a leader in that, right? So in a way, just what I'm trying to say is, I think I created an organization, or a movement that I needed and I wanted, right? So it is, it is very rare for a Nepali woman to be out there, right? Out there on social media and so on, right? So it is, and it's, I guess, worked in my favor. People have found me authentic. I am on social media and offline. I am the same person, right? So that has resonated with a lot of people, but that has meant a disruption of what it means to be, a social entrepreneur, or a social, community leader, or anything like that, right? Because we're so used to, when you think about these civic organizations and so on, they're usually run by older middle-aged men, right? Women are, we hardly have those. At least I haven't seen things, the ones that I've attended, or the ones that I've been a part of. I haven't seen a Nepali woman sort of lead the way, right? So to answer your question, yes, it's incredible. It's better than what I would have imagined, but it's also has been a lot of reflection and sort of moving forward, and also disrupting that. It's if you think about imposter syndrome, this is way crazier than that, right? Because there has not been a blueprint for a Nepali professional organization, and here I am trying to do something and trying to bring people together for something that even I'm figuring out in public, right? So it's been that exciting, scary mix of all of it. So it does it's been great, but it's also been a lot of that exploration, right? And I think people have I also strongly think that people have been a part of this journey and been supportive because they've seen me trying to figure this out, right? I haven't said on day one, oh, I have the solution to our problem, here you go, this is what we need, and all of it, right? From day one I've been saying, okay, this is a problem that I'm seeing, and I feel like a lot of people are seeing. How do we do this? How do we sort of shape this community? How do we build it? And I think that vulnerability or that authenticity and trying to build in public has aligned with a lot of people.
I think those are some really incredible and empowering things that you said, from creating this movement to sort of bridge that gap and find a solution to what you experienced, but then you were so vulnerable. But I think being vulnerable means being brave. A lot of people don't dare to be vulnerable in social platform, when they are trying to figure things out and ignore the noise, external noise, where, okay, what people might be thinking or, judging. But I think to put yourself in that spot as a leader and become that role model for, people like me who are looking up to a icon to follow, right? And I say icon because I think you've broken so many stereotypes as to, the male dominated organization leader, and you stepped into that territory, into that unknown territory. You've created so much impact. And I think now we have a roadmap, right? And we see you as this role model for us to, like, oh, hey, yeah, there's a path. We can take a path that's less traveled, dare to be different, because a lot of times we have this conditioning of fitting in the box. And if you go a different route, we're scared of what people might say. And if nobody has done it before, it's kind of hard for us to take that massive step. So I think you've paved a path for a lot of women who are looking to fulfill their dreams, and that has no territory or timeline of what you need to accomplish by your 20s, 30s. And that brings me to my another question. So I'm in my mid 30s, and I've been self-reflecting and contemplating about a lot in my life as to what I've done and where I want to go, right? Because half of my life, if you technically speak, almost half of my life is gone, and I'm in so much better space now than I was a couple of years before. But I talk to a lot of women through this, little communities that I'm part of, and a lot of time we as modern people, be it Nepali or immigrants from other countries or people from states, right? We have this notion of, okay, I'm 30. I have to be, I have to achieve certain things by this age, but I haven't. So what's wrong with me? I think that's kind of a mindset a lot of, especially women. I don't know about men, but women have that. So what message or what would you tell to someone who's in their 20s, 30s and thinking, oh my God, I should have figured out my life, but I don't know what to do, and they're feeling lost, or, they're in a space where they don't know what to think of themselves because they're comparing to their fellow people and, thinking I should have accomplished so and so by this time because all of my contemporaries have. So what words of wisdom or encouragement would you offer them to navigate this journey with some sort of wisdom, resilience, or clarity, right? Especially when they're uncertain about their future.
One, I'm still figuring out my life, right? So my advice to people is, I think we shouldn't look at it as just being scary. I think it's also exciting, right? To have an entire phase of your life that you can explore. So I think one is that mindset in terms of, yes, it could you could term it as scary and a lot of it, but also it could be incredible, right? The way I look at this phase of my life is that uh, you know uh, it's such an incredible new start, right? And I feel like I'm just getting started in terms of this community, the VC fund. There's just so much happening. So one, life doesn't end at 20 or 30 and 40 and all of that, right? Every phase of our life has a different uh, purpose and meaning and all of that, and it's completely fine, right? It doesn't have to be what you see. Social media is tough. I mean, I do have to admit it, right? I do have a social love hate relationship with social media, as do many people, right? And it's very hard not to sort of compare yourself to all of that. One quote that I always think of is, there's this saying called, the months are long, uh, the months are long, but the years are short,
Mm.
right? Which basically means when you're in it, it feels like a lot of things are tough and you need to figure out, you need to pay your bills, you need to obviously, you can't just, run on your beliefs and all of it, right? You need to, have things that pay your bills, and there's a practical aspect of life as well, right? Which I don't want to discount in all of that. But there's but when you look back, you look at in a lot of things, you are able to see patterns, you are able to see what aligns with you and who you are as a person, right? So my advice to people is, one, even though we are you know we tend to compare ourselves with our friends or family members and so on. We're all very unique and we're meant to have unique paths, right? So, be comfortable with all of that. But to make it practical, what I want to also suggest is, while you figure all of that out, earlier you had to figure all of it out yourself, but now we have a community. So,
Mm.
while we all, uh, go through these points at each phase of our career, the best thing you can do is also really talk to people, right? Find your tribe, and it doesn't have to be the same set of friends or people that are around you, but find people that are very different from you, right? Ask questions, uh, explore new things, new interest, and all of it, right? Because the paths we take can be linear or very non-linear, can go all over, but at the end of it, I think what matters is and it's such a cliche word to use, you're happy, right?
Mm.
You figure out all of that, but at least now we have a supportive community to actually take you through all of that. And one sort of thing that just want to share as well is, at the Great Nepali Diaspora, we also have a very vibrant women's group, right? Because I think Nepali women especially need a lot of safe spaces to be able to vent and to talk and to get mentored and to have honest conversations, right? So my advice to people is, one, don't take yourself or life that seriously, right? We all find our ways, but two, also figure out who you can ask for support, ask for advice. That never, asking for help is like the or asking questions is like the best skill you can have. The best thing you can do for yourself is asking, right?
Mm. Yeah, no, I think that I'm personally gonna start implementing some of those, especially asking for help. I think, I don't know, I was talking to my fellow Nepalese guest the other day, and we sort of agreed that asking for help is something that we were probably encouraged, but never allowed in societal space in Nepalese
Right.
community, because especially as a girl child, when you ask too many questions, it's about, okay, you are just too much.
Mm.
You're
You're
expected to stay
disrespectful, right?
quiet,
Exactly. Yeah.
especially to your elders, right? You're
Mm.
expected to just follow what you're told, follow instructions, and
Exactly.
live in that box. So it becomes very difficult when we grow or when we become an adult to break those
Right.
habits, let go of the conditioning, and be bold now and to
Hmm.
address your needs, your ask your questions, ask for
Of
help. I
course.
think it's a
Yeah.
it's a very difficult thing to learn, and I'm still learning to ask for
Yeah,
help.
yeah. I
And
think we were all learning, and I think asking for help also, because it sort of internally it signals that I'm not doing enough, or you know what I mean. I think these kind of biases hold us back, right? It's
mm,
almost again being vulnerable, right? And we're taught not to be vulnerable, so it's hard to sort of say that, okay, I'm trying but something's not working, how do I sort of move forward, right? It sort of
mm.
is accepting that you know you need somebody to help you, right? I think it's something that we all need to learn for sure.
For sure. You
Mm.
know, I'm curious to know, so in your life, right, with so many diverse experiences, have you had moments or time in your life, personally, professionally, where you had to sort of reinvent or reset yourself? And I know you mentioned you just started, so that itself becomes sort of a new start,
Mm.
restart, reinvent, right? So have you had those moments where you have felt, okay, I need to reset my life, reinvent my life, and sort of shift to a different direction? And if so, like, what are some steps you implemented or in your life that helped you overcome those challenges? Because to be honest, it's easy to say, but it's
Yeah.
very hard to do and continue to do, right? So could you
Right.
share some tips that could be helpful for our listeners, who
Sure.
might be in place of needing a change but don't know where to start and what to look out for?
Sure. So in my case, I I lived in Canada, Singapore, and now the US. I've moved back to Nepal twice. So, one side of my life is obviously like an adventure, lived in so many places, very exciting. But then it hasn't been all that easy to adapt to a new life, restart every time, right? So in a way that this community that I'm building is something that I've needed in my life, right? In terms of having to move to Singapore and not knowing anybody and having to figure out your new life and friends and circles and all of that, right? So all of that has been, not easy. One sort of belief that my learning has been that there are so many things in our lives that are beyond our control, right? We can have as many to-do lists and checklists and 5-year plan, life plan, and all of that, but a lot of things that happen in our lives are very unpredictable. They sort of come out of nowhere, or they're sort of beyond our control, right? For me, I think one, you can term it as resilience or perseverance, and all of it. You can, give it different names. But one strong, strong belief that I have is that how do I control the narrative of my life?
Mm.
Right, with all of that, right? uh, which sort of sounds very uh, sounds very inspirational, but if you just look at the ground reality of it, what it means is there's so many uh, you know I still make plans, plan A, plan B, and all of that. I still move forward, I still have checklists and all of that. But if all of that blows up, all of that, some unexpected factor comes in, that I have to reset a lot of things, a lot of plans and all of that, how do I move forward? How do I still sort of not life dictate where I end up, but I sort of manage it, right?
Mm.
So, to give you an example, uh, a lot of times, my career paths have been sometimes it's been okay. This seems interesting. Let me give it a shot. But sometimes it's been okay. I'm here. How do I sort of use my experience so far and my transferable skills and figure out this new industry, for example, right? Or even, while I'm building the Great Nepali Diaspora, it's been, okay, I think I'm good in marketing. I think I'm good with people. I have all these connections. How do I sort of uh, bring all of that together? Right. Otherwise, there's like, it's almost like, how do you, I look at my life or a lot of things as puzzles, right? We're sort of different parts of the things, and how do you sort of try to bring it together, right?
Mm.
So again, my advice to people is sometimes uh, you know it's hard to control a lot of things, right? But if you take a step back, if you reflect, and if you try to figure out how to control that narrative, it does help, right? That is,
Mm.
and then you take baby steps, right? In
Mm.
terms of
That.
uh, reclaiming your life.
That was so wonderful. I loved how you said controlling your narrative, something
Mm,
like that, right? The story that we tell ourselves
right,
about who we are, what's happening to
right.
us, all the story. I think before even the world tells us anything, we are very good at just criticizing
Exactly.
ourselves, judging ourselves,
Especially,
self-doubts.
women, especially minorities, especially immigrants. We don't need any enemies. We're our worst critics and everything, right? So we need to change that. And
Mm.
one more point I do want to make is, Sabina, that's why I'm super excited that you're doing this, because we need more Nepali women being out there and doing something that fills them with purpose. So I'm glad you're doing it.
Thank you. Yeah. So tell me about Preeti. You are a startup advisor, and I think you are a thought leader, right? So how do you advise um, aspiring Nepali entrepreneurs or professionals around the globe, or those who are listening, to stay true to themselves and stay connected to their roots while pursuing their goals?
Sure. One, I think, identity, I think, is very fluid, right? I have a lot of reflections and a lot of dialogue around what it means to be a Nepali, right? And as we, especially people like us that are part of the diaspora, that sort of, are outside Nepal, working, studying, whatever. It's so very fluid, right? We are a little bit of Nepali, a little bit of our host countries, and a mix of all of that. Um, my advice to people is embrace that, right? I think even being Nepali is very personal, right? So it doesn't have to be, you wear daura sural or sari all the time, or you have dal bhat at every day, every meal of your house, that you speak Nepali all the time. Whatever works is completely fine, right? An easy sort of way to have connection with your roots is, I'm hoping, through the diaspora, right? By
Mm.
being connected to other Nepalis. Of course, in our comfort zone, we all already have friends and family that are, that have roots in Nepal and so on. My humble request to everybody is, give Nepali strangers a chance as well, right? In terms of, if you're hiring, give a Nepali a shot. If you have a little bit of bandwidth, a little, few skills that are great for others to learn from, mentor people. And I think when all of that comes together at scale, if I mentor a few people, if a few people get job opportunities, overall it's just adds so much to our community. So one is just that, right? I think being connected to your roots, the diaspora is a part of it. And I think one thing that I'm also seeing overall is this thing where, when we originally come to the US or anywhere, right? We're struggling, we're trying to survive, we're trying to just adapt. We're trying to, not figure out anything else. We're just trying to survive. We're just trying to, I don't know, get a green card, get a, job, good paying job, everything. And then when people sort of reach their midlife, then people start questioning, okay, should I go back to Nepal? How do I contribute to Nepal? So those kind of questions start, right? Uh, my suggestion is you don't have to wait till you're in your late 30s or 40s before you start thinking about reconnecting to Nepal. You could, uh, continue that even when you're outside Nepal, right? I think the best thing about being abroad is that we have access to a lot of information, opportunities, uh, that or networks that people in Nepal don't have, right? So the best thing that we can also do is from wherever we are in the world, we also democratize access. We open up access to people that might not have it. That's
Mm.
a wonderful, impactful way to do that. So for people, choose what being authentic means for you, right? Whether it's a sari, whether it's a dress, it doesn't matter, right? And just keep that connection alive. Don't wait till you're like in your middle age to explore that reconnection.
That's lovely. Yeah, I think you said it very right. And now I know why you are even better leader in terms of bringing people together because you're talking about identity, right? Like how we view ourselves, our self-perception of, okay, as a Nepali, if we immigrate to any other foreign country, we can still keep our identity of being a Nepali. In fact, that might be our unique, trait
Of
to
course.
who we are, who we show up, and our personality. So I think that's a beautiful thing to sort of accept. And I think you mentioned this, like kind of self accept as to who we are and what we're becoming, right?
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I think that's great. And this, something that I've experienced in my life as well, when we are initially um, we migrating or we initially move to a different country, we're focusing on our basic needs
Mhm.
or this and thinking about this Maslow's hierarchy when
Exactly.
we have all the basic needs fulfilled, we have a good stable job, and then we get to that point of self-actualization and then now start to think about those various things, what I can do,
Right.
where I can give people things back. But we don't have to get to that point to be of service to people. We
Exactly.
can build communities, be part of communities, and
Right.
support each other. And I think that's a beautiful thing that you mentioned. So thank you so much for, sharing all those
No worries.
wise tips. I think I took a lot of notes, by the way, and I have a lot of self-reflection to do. If there's one takeaway you'd like our listeners to remember out of this conversation today, what would that be?
One is, I think you had a question that we didn't cover, and I'll sort of connect that in terms of a superpower, right? What would be my superpower and so on. Yeah, I do think two of my strengths are, I'm very organized, and I think I seem to have a lot of energy, which I've done, which have been great, right? But one, real superpower I think that I share with a lot of immigrants and minorities and women, all of us, is being underestimated, right? And we never think of it as something that is powerful. We think that that's a bad thing, right? If somebody underestimates you, if somebody sort of thinks they can push you over, it's not a good thing, right? It means that maybe there's something in my personality where they think I'm weak or I'm not assertive enough, whatever, right? It adds to, our already sort of the imposter syndrome and, all the questions we have about ourselves. What I've realized is, when somebody underestimates you, it actually makes you work harder and smarter, which are never bad things, right? Which actually, it always keeps you on your toes in a way, right? Which is something that, even if, you can be successful in whatever ways, but I think having that, ground reality in a way is, I think, powerful, right? So one is that, and two, on the other side, if people underestimate you, they're sort of not expecting that at all, right? So it is the best feeling in the world to prove them wrong, right? So my advice or takeaway to people is we are used to people underestimating us, not understanding us, not believing in us, right? And it could be, your family, your friends, or other people, or, when you're looking for a job, any kind of thing. And it could be any scenario where somebody isn't believing in you, right? So for me, I think it energizes me, like, when we talk about TGND and so on, and somebody underestimates me, it's like in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to show you, right?
Watch me.
So watch me, right? So I think that but in a good way, right?
Yeah.
Not taking it personal, not going after vengeance, but actually using that energy to fuel ourselves. I think that's something that I want to really tell people to really harness that energy, right? That energy of not being able to having to adapt and survive, and just tick all the check boxes and all this sort of things that we've had to do, sort of, whether in our personal and professional lives. I advise everybody to be authentic, to be vulnerable, but also like take all the even the negative things in their stride.
That's lovely. Yeah, it's like, this old quote, I think it goes like, if people throw stones or bricks at you, you just build something out of it,
Build a
right?
mansion
And
out of it,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I think it's very interesting when you said, all this uh disbelief or judgments that people pass. You sort of get energized and you get the energy to do something out of it, which you are like basically transmuting that energy, using it to your benefit and building this massive platform. And perhaps, like you said in the beginning, it's something probably, we didn't know we needed until we saw
Yeah,
it.
of
Right?
course.
I think all the notes that I've taken, I'm definitely going to reflect on myself and just to soak in, because there's amazing things that you mentioned. And I know that our listeners who are listening or watching us can have learned a lot from this conversation. But at the end, thank you so much, Preeti, for your time. And I had a great conversation. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Sabina. I had a wonderful time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining me this week on The Reset Mantra. I am Sabina Maharjan. Join me again next week, and in the meantime, please subscribe and leave me a review. If you have someone who you think will be great on the show, please get in touch and find me and the podcast on Instagram at I am Sabina Maharjan and at The Reset Mantra. I'm so looking forward to next week, and I'll catch you then.